We'll be looking at NATO's first-to-fight nations, those Baltic states. We heard about Ukraine being the shield, so to speak. There are countries that obviously have a border with Russia, and we will be speaking to, I am thrilled to say, our next guest in this high-level conversation on the Baltic states, NATO's first-to-fight nations. Please join me in welcoming to the stage His Excellency Egils Levits, the President of the Republic of Latvia. Welcome, welcome. So we've been listening to NATO, the New Dawn. We've been hearing how, as Michał there described, Ukraine as a shield. But we know, obviously, your country, the Baltic states, share a border with Russia. I just wonder, your concerns since this invasion?
Nowadays, geography plays a role, but much more relative as maybe 100 years ago. Because the distance for rockets from Kaliningrad to Berlin is the same as from Kaliningrad to Riga. It's rather in the mindset of the people and not as a military argument. So I would say that as Latvians, as representative of Baltic states, we are concerned on the security situation in Europe, very concerned, and we are committed to European Western values, and we are member of the system of collective defense, collective security. This means NATO. And NATO is defending all members in the same way. There is, I would say, would be absolutely different situation when we would not have NATO as a defense organization, which was established already 1949. And I think NATO is a basis for defense of democratic states in Europe, in North Atlantic.
Are you happy, though? Are you convinced that should anything, God forbid, happen, that Article 5, that collective responsibility, that's strong? You feel shielded, do you?
Of course, Article 5 is a basis of NATO. Without Article 5, there would be no need for a NATO. Although this is a basis of the collective system of security, and collective system can work only when all member states are committed to the system. And I am absolutely sure that all member states are committed to NATO. And I participated in June this year in NATO summit. We have adopted a new strategy because the old one was not more realistic. The old one was adopted 2010 by different situation. Now we have adopted our NATO strategy to the new reality. And the basis of the new strategy is defense, deterrence through credible defense. And therefore we should invest in credible defense in order to keep Russia within its own borders. This is the task. Now we have not chosen that, but this is the right reaction to the situation.
For the first time, the strategic concept mentioned Russia as a direct threat. It mentioned China as well for the first time. But concretely, what has NATO done for Latvia since the escalation of the war? Because, of course, we've been talking about the war having been ongoing. It's not the 24th of February when this all kicked off.
Of course, Latvians are committed to the European values, to our democracy. We know the price of freedom. We are committed to Article 5, to the common security system, like other members of NATO. Because I would like to stress again, collective security can work only when all member states are committed to that. And I'm sure, as democratic states, we are sharing the same values as United States, as Poland, as United Kingdom, as Portugal. And I would say for this is a reason why we are in NATO, and we are very happy that we are in NATO.
So Mr. President, you're happy that you're in NATO.
Yeah.
Arguably, it's complicated for Ukraine. That's putting it mildly.
Yeah, I admit
understatement.
that it's more complicated, yes.
Just to pick on something that someone from the audience in the previous panel said, should Ukraine be part of NATO? Should you be just gunning for that and getting Ukraine within the shield of NATO?
NATO is a defense union for defense, and NATO is not aggressive organization, but only defense. It's absolutely clear. No one in Berlin, no one in Riga, no one in Paris are thinking how to conquer Moscow or Kaliningrad or someone. I think this is absolutely ridiculous. So it's very clear. It's a defense organization, and this is a basis for this collective security system. And of course, concerning Ukraine, Ukraine wants also to be member of this defense union, because Ukraine knows that it is a guarantor of peace. We in Latvia and other states are committed to the declaration of 2008 summit, that it is open for new members, also for Ukraine. And in due time, we are not only ready, we want to have Ukraine in our system. Ukrainian army, Ukrainian society is only society in Europe now, and only army now, which has the experience of defending the country. And it is a very strong, motivated military in Ukraine, strong, motivated society as a whole to defend democracy. And it would be an advantage for NATO to have such strong member. We should think about how to include in due time. I will stress that when all member states are ready to that. But of course, we see Ukraine as a strong future member of NATO.
Future member. Future member.
It's not possible tomorrow.
Not for now.
Yes, future member.
Just looking within Latvia itself, you have a Russian-speaking minority. I wonder if you can just tell us what the situation is on the ground within Latvia, because it's a complicated situation for this specific group of people.
It's not more complicated than several other states, but I would say that big majority of the Russian minority is absolutely loyal to Latvian state. There is a minority within the minority, I repeat, minority within the minority, which have still some sentimental feelings towards Russia. And we see that these feelings are, after the Russian war against Ukraine, are decreasing, because I repeat again, as a big majority of Russian minority want to live in Europe, not in a repressive, backwards-oriented Russia.
What happens with those Russians who are trying to leave Russia right now, the people that don't want to fight for Russia? What should happen?
Yes. So we see that this is not only a war of Putin. He alone is not committing all the crimes in Ukraine. He needs help for that. there is a lot of people which are from ideology committed to this ideology of imperialism, colonialism, and racism of the 19th century. He is not alone. And we see that with such mindset of big part, I would say maybe, or it seems unfortunately, majority of the Russian population. Of course, it is ideological war. And ideological war, and this ideology is shared by a big part, maybe majority of the Russian population. It is possible within a short time to ideologize a big part of population through specific instruments. We saw that in Germany in end of the 90s or end of the at the beginning of the 30s. Yeah. Only a small part of Germans were Nazis. 5, 6, 7 years later, the big majority were Nazis. And this process is very similar to ideologization of Russians by this backwarded ideology. So we don't want this people by us, but there are enough countries in Europe which want to give them possibility to flee, because I would say this people don't want, they are supporting this ideology, but they don't want to fight themselves. They want that the neighbors are fighting, but not themselves. And therefore, I would say for Latvia, it is better that we don't have much of this Russian citizens. They can easily go to western part of Europe.
So are you effectively saying that you are closing your borders? Just remind us what the position is with this.
Yes, we are not more giving tourist visa for Russian citizens. Only in specific circumstances we are giving visas. It's not only our position, it's a position of at least 4 countries: Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, and Finland is very close to our position.
But just in terms of, and I'm going to push this a little bit, but just in terms of if you have this, whatever reasons they're not willing to fight, they're not willing to fight. That means they are not in Russia and they're not getting conscripted and they are not fighting. Is it just not better to have them out of that country?
Maybe it's better for other Western European countries, not for us.
They don't share a border with Russia, though. They're crossing your border.
Of course, if some Western European countries want to have this, we can organize a transfer to these countries.
Diplomatically put. You've been to Kiev many times. You've been to Kiev.
Yeah.
And I know you feel strongly about the possibility, the process of holding people to account. Just talk us through what you hope the international community will do to support future war crimes processes while this war is ongoing, because it's important to look at that right now.
Yes, I was in Kiev one month ago. I have a very good conversation with President Zelensky, with Prime Minister Shmyhal, with other personalities. The Ukrainians are very motivated to defend the country. It's absolutely different to Russians. They are not motivated to fight, and therefore there is now maybe if I guess so, more or less equal situation on the front. And the Ukrainians are able to go further to liberate some parts of the territory. But concerning Russian war crimes, I would say that impunity is an invitation to crimes. In also in all societies, but also in international community. Impunity is invitation to crimes, and therefore it is for principal reasons it is necessary to establish an institution which would examine the responsibility of the Russian state for the gravest violation of international laws since the Second World War, and also individual war crimes. Concerning individual war crimes, the International Criminal Court in Hague is already started investigations. You know that justice is working normally slow, but in next year or in due time there would be court proceedings against the Russian war criminals in Hague. And also for state responsibility is also a very important question, and I assume that there would be and should be a special tribunal on the Russian war of aggression, because till now the International Court of Justice has not directly jurisdiction on this issue, but it is a gap in international law, and the international law is the basis for international peace order, and therefore it is responsibility of the international community to defend international law. And I think this is to organize an institution which would examine Russian, I would say, the responsibility of the Russian state, then it is necessary in order to not to allow or not to give a reason for further crimes. For principal reasons, it is not important that the persons are sitting in the court accused, but for principal reasons that the international community is committed to international law. And if we are not doing so, that means it would lead to destruction of international law, and it would also end in a armed chaos in the world.
And just while we're looking at the future, I just want to throw forward a little bit further into the future then. As a final point, as a final thought, what do you do about Russia? How do you eventually, what kind of policies do you bring in to get this country back into the fold? Because you're not going to change the geography of where Latvia is. You will always share that border with Russia.
Yes, of course. I said already, from Kaliningrad, rocket has the same distance as to Berlin. We are doing all together with all European allies, with all NATO allies. We are sharing the common policy, because only together, not Latvian, not German, not Spanish policy can change the situation. Only NATO, European Union, also transatlantic or Western policy, if we want, can guarantee the peace in Europe.
On that note, Your Excellency, thank you so much. Egils Levits, the President of the Republic of Latvia, thank you so much for your frankness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, you have 20 minutes in which to grab some coffees, grab some food in the next room, and we'll see you in 20 minutes' time back in here. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. That was great.